Becoming a successful professional speaker is a journey. How do you find that first stage, the next stage, and then the bigger and better stages? I'm Lee Hayes, your host. My co-hosts and I are here to guide you to a more successful speaking career. You're listening to Path to the Main Stage podcast. Hello, everyone. Here is an episode, actually, hopefully the beginning of a couple episodes that so many people have been asking for, and that is about books. Do I need a book? How do I write a book? How do I publish? How do I market? I have brought to you today the expert on writing a book, and specifically a prescriptive nonfiction, which I will let her to get into shortly. But let me give a little intro here. Today's guest is AJ Harper. She is an editor. She's a publishing strategist. She was a ghostwriter. I don't believe ghostwriting anymore, but she is a co-author. She's an editor. She's worked with some of the foremost leaders of our time. She's written multiple New York Times bestsellers. She is the voice behind millions of books sold. She's the co-host of Don't Write That Book. It is going to be this book. Don't Write That Book podcast with Mike Michalowicz, which I absolutely love. And I have to plug right now that if you like this episode with AJ, jump over to Don't Write That Book podcast for the deep dive for 111, because I listened to it, episodes so far of the steps of writing a book. We're going to get the overview today. She's Mike Michalowicz's writing partner and has worked on him with 9 books, including Profit First, which is one of those over 1 million copies sold books that she's co-authored. And today I brought her on not to share the easy and fast way. You're not going to learn today how to AI your book and get it on a shelf in 30 days. What I want her to teach you about is the effective way, the right way to do something that's going to mean something to you in the world, that's going to bring your brand to life. And before I ask AJ to jump in here, even if you don't want to write a book, even if this is not on your list of things to do, still listen, because I'm a big fan of her book. Here we go. Write a Must Read, which if you're not watching the video, I was just holding it up. Write a Must Read. I have learned so much from her book and from the podcast about the speaking industry, because they talk about things in marketing, in writing your bio, in positioning, which is absolutely relevant even if you're not writing a book. So just throwing that out there, that's not the only thing. Anyway, they say you should never meet your heroes. I know AJ's like, what are you talking about? She is absolutely one of my heroes. I'm taking the risk by bringing her on because she can do no wrong. She is fantastic. Welcome so much, AJ Harper.
Oh my gosh, I'm so touched that you would say that. I definitely can do wrong. I have a spouse that will tell you that and a child that will tell you that. Yeah. And probably my team too.
Well, okay. In the writing world, how's that? You are such a fantastic voice of other people, right? You bring other people's words to life as well as your own words to life with your own fabulous book and co-written books. And I just want to mention also, she's also a keynote writer for, oh my gosh, heroic public speaking with Michael Port. You've all listened to Michael Port on my show already. So, But the writing part of it, I think you do so much work to bring people's words to life. Let me let you jump in here now. What excites you about what you do and bringing these books to life?
I love teaching craft. I love helping people understand that they can learn how to do it, that it's not writing something truly remarkable is not about some sort of God-given talent. It's not some sort of magic. It really is just learning some simple craft skills and frameworks and ways to think about things, and that you can get better at it. And then it's pure joy for me to see the authors I work with get better so that their confidence increases and that those are skills they have for life. But I think the real reason is because I work with people who are writing books designed to help people make a change, to make the world better. And because I'm helping authors write better books, then more people will actually make the change. So I'm part of that. And I love being part of that ripple effect of change. So if I can help you write a book people actually read and do something with, then I'm part of the change. And that just lights me up.
My gosh, that's beautiful. And how do you do this? So I know what you do, but could you just tell us a little bit about the programs you offer, just the depth of knowledge and how you share that with authors?
Sure. Well, I've been in publishing 21 years, and before that, I was a playwright. And I was a ghostwriter for the first 10 years. And then I burned out on it, and it was actually Mike who said, why don't you teach this? Because I had developed a system for myself to write prescriptive nonfiction that really delivered. And he said, well, you should share your systems. And I said, I don't have any systems. It's all me. And he called BS on me and
That's
said
my style.
that's your ego. He said, you think you're the only one who can do it, but you do have systems. So, I always listen to him when and he listens to me. If I say that's your ego, he listens too. So it's definitely a give and take. We've been writing together for, I think, 17 years now, which is crazy.
Holy moly.
Right? That's like almost an adult child at this point, if it were a child. So I took a year to figure out, can I teach it? Can I work with clients instead of doing it for them? Can I help them do it themselves? And then I started teaching a workshop, and I realized, yeah, this actually does work if I teach it. So since 2018, I've been teaching an annual workshop called Top 3 Book Workshop. It's called Top 3 because I want authors to want their book to be on someone's top 3 list. I don't want them writing just any book. I don't want them to write a book to say, I have a book. I want them to write a book that they're determined will be beloved, a classic, useful, always recommended, not ending up in the free bin,
Mm-hmm.
And so I teach that workshop. I also do editing retreats at my place on Madeline Island. And then I have a membership, but I keep things pretty small because I like to work very closely with authors.
And I know that your genre specialty is prescriptive nonfiction, which really is what will apply to most of the books that author or that speakers want to write. They want to change the world. Can you just explain what is prescriptive nonfiction?
So it is a book that is designed to help a person or organization or group make a change. And so the goal is that there's a transformational arc. And part of it is in the word prescription, because this is part of it is how to. I also do help with teaching memoir and so forth, but I'm a big believer in backing up your insights with how, showing people how to do things. Prescriptive nonfiction shows people how to make the change.
And let's just jump into books now. I
Okay.
mentioned very briefly in the beginning, this is not a lesson on how to AI a book and get it on a shelf in 30 days. Because some people want to do that. And quite frankly, somewhere down the road, I'll probably have one podcast on how do you write a big business card. But this is really how to write a book that has the potential to be a true bestseller, or at least leave a mark or change people's lives. What is that, from a 30,000-foot view, what does that process look like? It's not 30 days. What
No.
is a true view? If somebody says, you know what, I'm going to write this book, what would you say? Okay, this is what you should expect.
Are you asking me how long is it going to take?
Yes, timeline and effort. So if you say, oh, Lee, it's going to take 3 years, does that mean 40 hours a week every single time? Or is this is this, what effort do I need to put into writing a real book? Hours, days, months, years. What does that mean?
The thing is, it's so different for everybody, because if you said, I've been teaching this class for 5 years and I know it works, then you're going to need less time developing your idea than if you have a concept you haven't tested. So for example, Mike always has a bunch of books on deck that he's thinking about. And when we're going to work on a new book, we go into a retreat for 2 days. And he'll bring to me, I'm thinking one of these 3 books, he'll say, and we'll talk it out. But if it's not developed enough, if he isn't sure that he has enough proof, enough social proof, that he hasn't tested things enough, then we move on from it, and he continues to test it. So I would say if you're starting just from scratch, then you're going to have to allow yourself more time to develop the book. Most people don't know what book development is. Is it okay if I share a
Please,
little bit?
because otherwise my next question is, what is book development? So jump right in.
So I think, a lot of people do, book in a weekend type things. And what that is getting your, basic foundation right, and your outline and all of that. But the thing is, it takes time to think. My big objection to rushing through these things is that you need to actually consider, who am I writing for, first of all, and then what is their journey, and where are they right now, and how is that different from what I experienced, and what do they really need, and how do they communicate. And so if you don't have a clear vision for who your reader is in terms of what they want and their perceived barriers, then that's going to take you a minute to just do some recon and create a message that's going to shift things for them, and a promise you can deliver on. And those are what I call book fundamentals. And if you're just focusing on that, it usually takes my students about 4 or 5 weeks to do that, by the way. But if you were starting from nothing, it might take you longer, because maybe they don't know your readers that well, so you've got to get to know them. If you have clients you're working with all the time, or you're teaching, or you probably have a better handle on it. So then it's creating an outline, but that's only if what you're about to share, it works. So you might need to pause, test. Mike creates focus groups. I have students who test in speeches, who do classes, courses, boot camps, challenges. It doesn't have to be super intensive, but you do need to make time for it, because the last thing we want is a book where you're just sharing stuff that works for you, but you don't know if it works for anyone else.
Okay, I'm going to pause there, because that is something I see out there, that when speakers suddenly go, oh, Lee, I have this concept, and they just whip it out on paper, exactly what you just described is happening, which is, it worked for me, therefore I'm going to give it to the world. And I've heard you say many times that you cannot look inwardly, you have to look at your audience, you've got to look at your reader, you have to write for your reader. And if they don't have your experiences, your knowledge, and all this, you've got to translate that into what works for them. But I love what you said about testing. Like, you need to prove that this idea works for the world, or for your reader. I shouldn't say for the world, can work for your reader versus yourself.
When you do the testing, it's great, because you can see what are the questions, what's the pushback, what's the points of friction. All of those points of friction will show up in your book if you haven't ironed it out in advance. And so then that becomes a book people put down. We've all done it. We have books we pick up, we get frustrated, we can't follow it, it seems like we can't do it, it seems overwhelming. Those are books we don't finish. And so it's in your best interest to spend more time in development, spend more time with your outline, really thinking about, okay, my reader's starting at a totally different place than I am. Let me get back there and understand, what assumptions am I making? What do I need to actually make sure they get? Let me take them on this journey, which is the transformation, and the destination is the promise. And honestly, that takes a few weeks to nail down.
And it sounds like weeks to years, because like you said, if you are doing something that you've taught for years, that was actually time that's gone into developing your idea, right? So it sounds like a huge part of writing your book is this formulation, which if you have the experience already, can be faster, but if not, you've got to do that much more digging, right?
Yeah, and people underestimate the thinking time. We want to do things so fast. We want to hit these goals, and we're missing all this discovery time. as authors, where we're figuring it out, and that's juicy, and you can really just put a question mark on how long will that take. But practically speaking, if you have a pretty good handle, I know this works, pretty good about my reader, then it can take you just a few weeks to create what I call a working outline. So to be clear, not set in stone. Yes, it's going to change, but what you want is a soup. It's not a table of contents either. People get that confused. It's not just chapter titles and what you think you're going to talk about. It's very specific, point by point. This is, I call it the progression of understanding. It's where are they, and then how does that knowledge unfold for them in a way that makes sense, and you're doing it point by point. And this is what's going to make writing the first draft so much easier, because now you go in and you write to that outline, and you are less likely to have a teardown. You have thought about it, you know it works. Maybe you're going to have to move stuff around later. I mean, you probably are, but you can at least get that first draft done in a faster than you normally would. And you're less likely to have to start from scratch all over again.
Okay, so we have this thought process, which takes as long as it takes. Outline, where do we go from there? Now I guess now you start putting the pen to paper. What does that process look like?
So I break it down into numbers, and I'm not a math person, but it's what works for me to be able to deal with what I call the inner critic troll. So it's, some people call it imposter syndrome. I think of it as actual trolls. And if you watch the video, you can see, I'm going to hold this up right now. I actually have them.
You've got a jar of trolls there.
I have a jar of mini trolls, and I keep them in here where they belong. But that's what it feels like sometimes. There's about 200 in the jar.
Holy moly. Okay.
Because it's not just one, it's all these different voices, you know? And the way that you can combat that and make sure that you're going to bang out that draft and not get stuck is to just focus on the math of it. How many words are you going to need? If you're writing prescriptive nonfiction, you're going to need somewhere between 40 and 70,000 words. So if you just pick 50,000 as a random number, just something to do, something to start with, then you look at your calendar and you figure out which days you can write and which days you can't write. And if you have a deadline, then you figure out, okay, I have 112 days to write to meet that deadline. How many words? 50,000 divided by 112. Okay, that's how many words I need to write. Or if you don't care, you don't have a specific end goal, you can just set a word count goal for yourself on the days you're going to write, and you just make yourself hit the number every time you need to write. You just make yourself hit the number, and that's all you worry about till you get through the whole outline.
Okay, and I know I've heard this come up again, being a fan of your show, that writing means you keep writing. You don't suddenly stop and go, oh, let me rewrite this. Let me start editing now in the middle. Should they start editing all along, or just like write initially and get the concepts down?
Okay, so here's the thing. If you're someone like me or Mike, who's practiced, we've written a lot of books, it's okay to do some revising while you're working on the first draft. What I've found is authors who are new to it, they get stuck. It's like a Bermuda Triangle. They just keep polishing. And the irony is, until you finish the first draft, you don't actually know all the changes you're going to make. It's not like you go in a sequence, polish chapter 1, move on, polish chapter 2, move on. When you get through the whole first draft and you go back and look at chapter 1, you're going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I wrote that. So you need to get forward motion. You need to bang out that draft and just get her done. If you think that you need some editing time, then hit your word count and then edit. Don't do a situation where you're not hitting that word count as you prescribed yourself to do, because it's important to just hit it. When you hit it, then those inner critic trolls go away. When you don't hit it, they say, see, you shouldn't bother with this. You don't know what you're doing. So that's why I say just focus on those numbers. Then you can predict exactly how long it will take you to finish your manuscript, or you can predict how many words you need to write so that you can finish by a set date. But realistically, for me, it's maybe 3-4 months. And that's with me having a business. I teach, I do other things.
But you're also a professional writer who...
But I'm slow. I'm
Okay.
so slow. I
Really?
am a painfully slow writer. Yeah.
Okay,
Like,
I've
because
heard stories that you can bang out amazing work, but okay, well,
I can, but it's not fast. Banging
okay.
out just means I'm getting it done. It doesn't mean I'm super fast. I think my average is about 300 words an hour,
Oh my
which
gosh. Okay.
is very slow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Sometimes I can do more. That's a good day, but I don't bank on it, you know? So I plan for worst case scenario.
all right. And now what's the next step?
So this just depends. Now we're in a, and even you might not even finish the first draft if you're going to choose a specific publishing path. So for example, if you're going to choose a traditional publishing path or a top tier hybrid, you need a book proposal.
All right. So why don't I put a quick pause on writing the book? Could you just explain the difference between traditional, hybrid, and even hybrid top tier and hybrid other, and self-publishing?
Yes. So this is a complicated topic, just so we're clear that while there are three primary paths, there are all these little offshoots within each path, and we could spend 5 days talking about it. So, you know, I think authors need to know that you're not going to be an expert in this. You're just not. So you have to get good guidance from someone you can trust. It's imperative because there's too many asterisks, if then statements, it depends, and it's all about you. So there's self publishing, which you do yourself. Pretty self explanatory. Within that, you can work with a packaging company, group of vendors, or you can totally DIY it. Then there's traditional publishing, which is what most people are familiar with. A publishing house is publishing your book. So they're handling every component of that except for the writing and revising. And of course, you are still selling the book. By the way, no matter which path, it's the same for you. You still have to sell. So that's a myth. Hybrid is a combination of the self and traditional in that you are supposed to be, and I do say supposed to be, getting a traditional publishing experience, but you're making an investment. With traditional, you're making zero investment. If you're asked to give them a penny, it's not a traditional publisher. But hybrid, you're investing. The challenge with hybrid is that it's not regulated, and any publisher can call themselves a publisher, by the way. Could be someone in their basement, one person, getting stuff done on Upwork.
Interesting. So there's no licensure or anything like that. It's just, well, it's like being a speaker. You can just say, I'm a speaker, and you are. So publisher just is. That's a good thing to know. How do you know, well, as an offshoot, once you finish your discussion, how do you know if someone's legit or not?
That honestly would be such a whole episode, but I'll give you some pieces of that in a minute. But for hybrid, I've coined the term top tier, low tier to help my students and authors understand this. Low tier is defined by they'll take anyone. They might say they have a selection process, but really it's like a factory, right? I'm turning out books. I'm not really being selective. Those hybrid publishers are focused on the front end. They're making money from the investment you make, and they're less concerned about if you actually sell it. Okay? Then there's high tier or top tier, and those are highly selective hybrid publishers where you're sending them a book proposal. They're not going to choose everyone. They have a small list, very selective group of people that they are investing in, because even though you're paying them a fee, they are legit publishers and they are invested in you and you continuing to sell your book. So those are the three primary.
Thank you for that offshoot there. And now we can jump back to, again, the process of writing a book, because you said it's different depending on which way you go. So once everything's on paper, and I guess you could do this whether you're traditionally published or self-published, substantive editing. Is that or am I way out of step here?
We're out of step because
Okay.
if you choose traditional or top tier hybrid, you'll need a book proposal. So if when I work with authors who choose that, then I tell them to pause once they've done 3 or 4 chapters of the book. They need to write a book proposal now. Don't even try to finish the rest of the book. You need to go pitch it. Now you need to go get the deal. And the reason is if you try to go traditional and you need an agent, you don't always need an agent. There's some publishers who take unagented submissions, but if you want to get a big five publisher, you definitely need an agent. That agent is likely going to ask you to change the proposal. They might want to change the outline somewhat. Even your editor might want you to change it. So now you've written your whole book and you have to go back and start over. So that's why I say put a pin in it if you're going for those paths and get maybe 3-4 chapters done. You might not give them all of them, but it's good for you to have your legs under you. And then write a really good book proposal and try and get your deal and then finish the draft.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense, because I think even though, and I've seen this happen with authors but this is the book in my heart, but they're telling me it's not the book that will sell. And I know, like Mike, you've written 9 books with him. I know that editors or publishers rather have killed deals. They've said this book is not the right book for us.
Well, Profit First is the only deal they killed.
Oh, I thought there was one not a deal that they killed. I thought there was one in there that he brought to a publisher and they went, what, Surge?
No, it was Profit First.
It was just Profit First. That's it. Okay, so they turned it down. He self-published and then they bought it.
It's like that scene in Pretty Woman, when she goes into the clothing store on Rodeo Drive and they had rejected her and she comes in with all her bags and she says, big mistake. That was Penguin's big mistake with Mike, because they rejected Profit First.
Wow.
And
now they have it.
Yeah, because they came back and said, oops.
We changed our mind. Okay. Yeah. All right. So you're starting to write. You get the 4 chapters, and I'm just working through this because I'm not we won't even go there. I'm not an author. So, and I feel like many people listening are sort of at the same stage. So you're going to write a few chapters of this thing that's in your heart, that you've studied, that you've researched, that's good. And now you do your proposal. Now let's say you sell your book. You either get a hybrid or a big 5. And because I think I'll leave self-publishing sort of off the shelf for now. But so if one of those things happen now, where are we going from there?
So then you'll have a deadline for when you need to complete the manuscript. You're going to complete it, and then you're going to go through a self-edit process. So that's where you're doing as much as you possibly can to make sure the book works. And something that I do with my authors, and Mike and I do, is we also do an advanced reader process. So we make sure that actual readers say that it works, and then you're doing your own work. And then when it's time for you to turn it in, you're not giving them a super rough draft. You're giving them the best draft you can. Okay, so that can take a few months. So usually, you've got, 4 months to a year before your manuscript is due. Once you get the deal.
Okay, so you've written it. You give them an self-edited copy.
Yes.
I feel like there's still a long way in front of us.
There is. So now you're in what's called substantive edits, and although your editor will not be called that, it's just the term for what's happening, and that's usually about 2 rounds, and it's the 30,000 foot view and some line editing. So they too are focused on, does this book work? Does this book deliver? Once you make it through that, and that process could be 2 months, 4 weeks, 2 months, 3 months. It kind of just depends on what's happening with that publisher and what the goals are for the book. You're going back and forth with that editor, and then finally, that is when your manuscript is accepted. So when you get your publishing contract and it says on acceptance, people get that confused. They think it's when you turn in the draft. No, because they need to make sure that you're actually going to implement edits. So only when you are done with that substantive edits is your manuscript technically accepted, because now it's been through that. They know the book is going to work, and now you're moving into what's called production. Production means no more major changes. It's copy edit, proofread, typeset, proofread. Those are the next 4 stages, and they're less time consuming for you as an author. So when it's copy edit time, you might take a couple days to work on that. If you're brand new, you might take a little bit longer. Same with proofread, but it's not as invasive or as difficult because you've done all that heavy lifting. Now it's production, just like what it says. We're producing it now. We're getting it ready to market. Then you wait for the book to come out.
But so this process from proposal to publish, about what kind of time frame are we looking for there with a traditional or top tier hybrid?
Let's change that to deal, because the thing
Okay.
is, maybe you don't get a deal, and that sometimes it could take you months or longer to get any bites.
Hmm.
So let's say you did get a deal. You're looking at it. If it's a top tier hybrid, it could be as short as 9 months, but uh, really you're looking at a year to 18 months from the time you get the deal.
Okay. So now the reason I'm pushing timelines so much here is, again, with emerging speakers, they're saying, "Oh, is a book going to take care of my career?" Sure, there are many ways to use a book as an author. And indeed, when I have, in fact, just this week, my goodness, I've already talked to a few people who are I'm pitching speakers, and I've been asked multiple times, do they have a book? We usually hire somebody who's got a book. So I just want speakers understanding that you can't today go, "Ooh, all right, next month I'll have a book and then I can do these things." Again, you can have an AI piece of garbage, but let me tell you, AI garbage is going to hurt your career as a speaker more than help it. Like a business card with a wrong phone number on it is worse than not handing out a business card. Right? I don't know if that's a great comparison, but it's like if you give people bad stuff, they're going to go, "Ooh, this is bad." If you give them nothing, well, at least you have everything else which is good about you, but you haven't killed your brand image. So,
Yeah.
uh,
The business card thing, if I can say, it's funny because it does help your careers, like you just said. They're asking, do they have a book? So it does help you somewhat to just have a book. But if you're trying to do big things, you want to get the big keynotes, you want to be on big stages, you want to have a big following, you have to write a book that people talk about. And no one's going to talk about an AI book that can't deliver change.
mhm.
You need a book that people say, "Oh God, you have to read this," right? Or when someone's saying, "Oh, I wish I had this problem," and another person leans over and says, "You know what? I just read this book. You should totally check it out." That's the kind of book you need if you're trying to do big things. So that's the irony is that you think your better business card is going to be good lead gen, but the best lead gen is a book people can't stop talking about.
um, so I'm going to jump back now about sort of just getting started. And how do you how do you know what your reader needs? How do you better listen to your reader or present that material that the reader's going to really want to hear it?
So there's two ways to understand your reader better. One is if your reader is an earlier version of you, it's to, remember what it felt like, what were your questions, what were your concerns, what were you wondering about? How did you see the problem? What did you really want? And to, go back to your journals if you have to. Just do some thinking about how you used to feel about things. But you can also just do recon. Go on to the social media channels or use your your mailing list, do a focus group on Zoom, anything to find out what do they care about most, what do they perceive as their biggest problem, what do they want most in the next, say, 12 months. We always want urgent problems. We don't want a problem they might deal with at some point. This is significant, especially if you're trying to get people to buy it and trying to get publishers to publish it. What's an urgent problem? What are people talking about that you can solve that's urgent? So just go LinkedIn, wherever you hang out, wherever your people hang out, and just ask. If it's a deeply personal thing, do an anonymous survey and just start collecting data to see how they talk about it. How do they talk about what's going on with them, the impact of the problem on their world, what they perceive the problem to be, and that's probably different than what you think it is because now you're further down the road. And this is usually the big disconnect, is authors identify the problem as they see it now, but they don't remember how they used to see it. But the readers coming in with this one view that the author then forgot about. And so they're not actually connecting because the author is not speaking the reader's language anymore. They're further down the road. So you just have to go back down the road, or you have to go poll people, literally poll people by whatever means is, you like to do. Could do it face to face, could do it on social, could do an anonymous survey.
Okay, no, that's fascinating. You're right. I can see that you forget what it used to be like back then, or other people's viewpoints. Let me ask about money, because that'll be another question out there, and that is, what are the costs associated with publishing? And I'm not going to include the author's time here. We're going to pretend that you've got free time, which is crazy, right? Because you've got to think about the way I think about it is, what am I losing in productivity in my business because I'm writing today? So that's a different way of looking at cost. But what is, let's even start with traditional. Like you said, you should not take a penny out of pocket and give it to them. But are there other costs that can be associated with writing a book?
Sure. I mean, if you're going to DIY it, there won't be, but maybe you need a class, maybe you need a coach, maybe you want to hire somebody to help you with your book proposal. All of those things can be pretty pricey. They don't have to be. You don't need to do it, but you might end up investing in some support in getting your book off the ground. If you want a ghostwriter, you're looking at, if you want a very experienced it's okay. You're looking at probably at least 40 grand if you're going to have a ghost. But if you're going to have a ghost like me, somebody who has been in it for a long time and writing for big people, I mean, you're really looking at like 200K. So I say write it yourself because that's, I'm frugal like that. But you might want a class, you might need a little help here or there. So that's some money. The other thing is for traditional, you're going to spend most of your money on platform building and marketing. And honestly, that number could be a few $1,000s, and that number could be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be. It just depends on goals and, what matters to you and if you have a team of your own, if you have to build one, if you're doing this DIY. There's so many ways to do it.
Well, what about hybrid? Because there are many different ways. In hybrid publishing, what is that range that you can look at? Because I know they're investing, but you're investing. What might be an author's investment?
For top tier, you're looking at base 40K and could go up to 100K. Now, I'm going to say, please don't spend $100,000 on hybrid. That's just me. I don't know that necessarily pays off, but I think you're looking at least 40 for a low tier hybrid. It could be about 5 or 10.
Okay, and that's with the hybrid, you're still writing the whole thing, but hopefully hybrids, they're going to be doing some of the editing for you.
Well, low tier hybrid almost never does developmental editing. So they're not doing that substantive 30,000 foot view. They're doing a copy edit for you. You also sometimes have to question what kind of editors do they have? Where are they getting them? If they can afford to charge such a low fee. But when you get into the 40K and the top tier hybrid, at least you have the traditional editing passes that need to happen, the actual process that needs to happen.
And could you just explain again, because I think that can be confusing, substantive versus copy edit?
So there's developmental editing, which is before you're writing the book and while you are writing the book. Okay. There's substantive editing after you have a draft. Okay. So you've got a complete manuscript, and that is the 30,000 foot view. Does this book work? And then some line editing sometimes is in there. Then after all of the big shifts are made, now you're moving into copy edit, which is what people traditionally think of as editing, but that's actually further down, and that's punctuation, spelling, syntax, grammar, some formatting, some fact checking, and then finally proofreading, which is we still have a bunch of mistakes even after all that. And those are all different editors, by the way. Those are not the same people. So even after, say, 4 editors, your proofreader is still going to find a bunch of mistakes because we're just human, And then it's just tiny little things at that point.
Okay.
But a low tier hybrid isn't doing all of that. They're speeding through that and skipping steps.
So it sounds like just the quality of a book that can come out of a top tier hybrid is much better because the book is more readable other than just being correct. Is that, I mean, because they're worried about the order, the tempo, is that all part of it?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When I started 21 years ago, it's when self-publishing was really taking off. And it's even easier now. It's crazy. It's how easy it is. The problem was that they decided, well, we don't need traditional publishing, so they tossed out most of the traditional standards. But we still need to follow them, even if we're not using traditional. They're there for a reason. Is this book going to work? How are we positioning this book? Is this book going to mean something to readers? Is this even the right book at the right time? Most self-publishing packagers and low-tier hybrids aren't even asking those questions, right? So then, is this the best book it can be? Does this float? Is there a through line? Does this make sense? Is it clear? Is it concise? Is it doable? All of these things you're going to get from a traditional publishing or you should. Okay, so let me put asterisk should, right? And so when you cut corners, you're missing all that. And so yes, you can, but you shouldn't.
All right. So can anybody write a book? When I say anybody, does it take somebody who's a literary genius, or is it somebody who's expressing what's in their soul? Because you look at pieces of work and it's like, oh, this is a classic work of fiction. This is a top book. Or is it really the message that matters? Like if I am a speaker and I have a message which I really feel I want to get on paper, do I have to have an English degree, or do you feel anybody can do it with the right support?
Okay, so fiction's very different. I mean, that's
You're right. I'm going to wind me back. Thank you. Somebody with a great idea, do they have to have real skills, or just is it important to have a good team and then most people can do it?
They need to develop those skills. I think the danger in saying they don't need a lit degree. I've worked with people who were in remedial English when they were growing up. I've worked with people who have severe learning disabilities. And they wrote great books in the end. They just needed a little more help. But you do need to learn the craft. It's not enough to have a good idea. If you can't figure out how a reader stays on the page, what difference does it make? They're not actually going to read it. Do you want people to read it? Do you want them to act on it? Do you want them to care about it and talk to people about it? There's a craft to that, and you have to learn it. So while yes, you can learn it, don't go into it thinking like, well, my message is enough. Your message is not enough. You have to learn how to be an author.
Well, thank you so much. I can't believe we've blown through this time already. And I'm really letting everybody know, I'm begging AJ to come back really soon to do the next step of this, which is today we talked about how to create a book. But I think the biggest part is once that baby's created, like you were mentioning, it doesn't matter if you're traditional or hybrid or self-published, selling that book, marketing that book, launching that book is a whole nother conversation, which I'd love to have.
Happy to do it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Wonderful. Well, I've got one final question for you that I ask everyone who's on my podcast, and that is, if you went back to AJ 21 years ago and said, here's the one thing that I wish I had known then that I know now, what would you tell her?
Would it be about authorship or is it personal?
Authors. Let's start with authorship. We're going to actually, you know what? I like that question. Let's do both. So what would you tell author, Anjanette, and what would you tell personal?
I would say slow it down and really make sure that you are working on your own stuff. So you mentioned earlier, what is the, productivity lost because I'm writing? But the thing is, the amount of visibility growth, business growth, bottom line growth you get from creating intellectual property that lives forever. I mean, man, it's like we can't just be focused on, did I not hit all my to-do list this week because of the book? And I wish I had known that, because I didn't prioritize my own stuff. So I would go back to myself and say, you need to pause and you need to make some of your own stuff. So I hope everyone else does that. Just, it's worth it to invest in your own intellectual property.
That is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We'll see you again soon. Thank you everybody for listening. I think that today's podcast should be hugely impactful for you. Again, Write a Must Read. I'm holding it up here. If you're serious about writing a book, check out Write a Must Read by AJ Harper. Check out Don't Write That Book podcast, and we'll do part B really soon. Thanks for listening to Path to the Main Stage. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for full video episodes, check out YouTube. If you want to be a successful speaker, you need to make it happen. My co-hosts and I are here to help guide you. But if you need more help, please check out pathtothemainstage.com, where we can connect. And until next time, keep sharing your voice, keep showing up, and keep taking your path to the main stage.